No. It's basically using AI to predict geospatial climate risks in planning or any sort of domain. So yeah, let's get started. And I'm just going to share
So
my
it's
screen.
climate risk, but it's not insurance.
Yes, it's not insurance; it's climate risk. So to just say the topic out loud again, let me just share my screen from the current
You
slide.
have. Huh.
Yeah, so it's basically like the topic is basically an AI-informed geospatial framework for integrating climate risk into urban form and disaster risk management. Now, that's a lot of words. Basically, climate risk is a geospatial risk, right, that we all face. So, what my research kind of looks into is how do we include this and how do we predict it before even doing something about it. So I'm just going to give a very brief presentation about this. But okay, why is this not working? Okay. Yeah, so the research started by understanding what is urban heat and flood risk, because I think as planners, we play a very crucial role in understanding how can we adapt cities to future climate changes. And the good thing is that climate data sets are available from IPCC, which is the I keep forgetting.
Governmental panel.
Yes, Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change. And they have something called as an SSP, which is the Shared Socioeconomic Pathways, which you might know about, I guess. But it basically means that how how we can use those scenarios for predicting the worst case scenario or the best case scenario. So SSP 1 or SSP 4.5 or something is like, what if we continue doing so? What is the case? And then like, oh, sorry, I think SSP 8, the worst case scenario is if we continue living the way we are living,
Business
how
as
is
usual.
exactly business as usual? How will that scenario work out? And the best case would be like if we start transitioning into clean energy, how would that scenario look at? Or something like that. So yeah, so basically we have climate data risks, data sets available, and this research kind of forms a framework for understanding how can we use that. Um, okay, so so the problem statement that I was looking at was that despite availability of all of this data, we lack a practical framework for its integration into urban planning. So there's a big gap in terms of like a lot of planners don't integrate this data. They don't know how to do it. In fact, there's always reactive planning, and by reactive planning, I mean like people just don't predict future risks sometimes, and it's like there's a missed opportunity for all this resilience framework to come in. So like quickly, I'll talk about the aims of this research. It was basically to enable a risk-informed urban design, then to facilitate future-based scenario planning, and then finally, from reactive, we need to support an anticipatory disaster risk management. So this might slightly go overboard for you, I guess, if you have not dealt with data sets before, which I think you might have dealt with a data set as an architect also. But most of this is done in GIS. So the data sets that we look at are flood exposure and urban heat island. For this research, I've only looked at flood and heat. And then for the city data sets that we can look at is like city land use or build density or tree cover, topography. So what we're going to do is like we're going to overlay all of these data sets on top of each other and then understand how what what does that give us. So oops,
So
sorry.
can I ask a
Yeah,
question or do you
go
want to
ahead.
finish?
Do you want me to finish and then we can jump back to that slide if you want?
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay. So once we get all that data, what we do is this is like a framework explanation of the methodology. What we do is in GIS, we sort of classify that information by low to high risk for each of the data. So like low to high flood risk or low to high heat exposure. And then this is only the current scenario. Like this is the baseline scenario, what is happening today. So for example, in Mumbai's heat case scenario, this is what the heat risk is. But we don't know after 50 years how will the heat risk change. We don't know after 100 years how will the heat risk or flood risk change. So that is why we incorporate the SSP projections from the socio pathways. Sorry, I keep forgetting the name. The
Shared
socioeconomic
risk.
shared pathways will give us the projections on how the heat and the flood changes the
Mm.
risk. Then once we get that, then this is where AI comes in. This might be slightly complicated, but the basic framework is that we take flood risk. You can see my cursor. We take flood risk, heat risk, all the city layers like land use, density, tree cover, all of them, and then we sort of overlay it on top of each other.
Mm.
And the way we do it is we assign weights to it. And this gives importance. So like flood risk is 0.3% important as compared to tree cover. And the reasoning of this weight is informed by AI. So like we can use a GPT model or an LLM to support the refinement of this weighting. And once that weighted overlay is sort of done, we use GIS or any other software to combine and create like a composite risk map. So this risk map is very important because in the next thing you can see that this actually gives us which are the high risk zones. So for example, in Mumbai or any other city, I'll give you an example in the next page, but you can identify like these are the high risk zones and this is where planning needs to be, like applied, and how do we guide zoning and how do we identify areas for nature based solutions, how do we inform planning and risk communication in this area.
Mm.
this is uh, this is the most crucial part of the output that is generated. And then this is like an example that we can look at. So for example, in the current present day scenario, you can see in Mumbai, like there's a big overlap between high density area and high risk zones. So like for example, Mumbai Central or Kolaba or Mankod, like these are really high density areas. And you can see like there's a high risk zone also over there. But this is the current case scenario. And we can see, I hope you can see my screen over here. You can see like if we project this scenario based on the IPCC scenarios, and this is also based on like the best case or the worst case. Like in the worst case, you can see like this risk is actually literally amplifying in the worst case places like Mankod or any of these places, even these areas. You can see like all the coastal areas are getting more high risk. And
Mm.
this is where like we understand like like what is the risk level, and it's very it actually gives us results which are very predictable, like how much area do we need to count at and everything. So this is the basic core of the research. And yeah, so like the conclusions were that we need growth towards low risk areas. We need to guide density towards low risk areas, and we need to support this through blue green infrastructure. Like I don't know if you know blue green infrastructure, but it's like um, impermeable surfaces, more trees,
Yeah.
all of that stuff. So those kind of
Permeable surfaces.
yeah, sorry, permeable surfaces and more trees, and basically stuff that absorbs all the risks within
Yeah.
the surface of the earth. And I think the next page would be, yeah, this is my last page, basically understanding what the future implications of this research could be. So right now I'm just looking at like a static data, but I want to look at real-time climate data also, and then compare this kind of a study to multi-city comparative studies like Pune or maybe in the US somewhere or maybe in UK, and then kind of look at a model for dynamic risk prediction, and finally look at like policy implication of the study. So yeah, that was it.
Awesome. Uh,
So I
it's a
know you had
very,
a
very
doubt.
comprehensive research and very well explained, like literally 5 minutes.
Yes.
So,
Thank you. Thank you.
this is what you're going to be presenting at the Turkey conference.
I already did present
You
it.
already did.
Yeah, I
You
did.
went there.
No, so I was supposed to go there, but my parents did not let me. I'm a 30-year-old. And they were like, "No, you can't go because the war is happening in the Middle East," and they were kind of worried about me. That's why I didn't go. But I presented online. They really liked it, and yeah, I thought I'll show it to you and others
Awesome.
also.
Okay. Um, so I had a couple of doubts, like just things that popped into my mind to
Yeah.
sort of elaborate the discussion a little bit as well.
Mhm.
Um, so which scenario did you take for the layering? Like which did you take the worst case or
So, in terms of like the worst case scenario, this is just the methodology. So, in terms of the methodology, I was trying to look at, hold on, sorry. Yeah. So you can see like SSP 5 and like maybe SSP 8.5, 5 to 8.5, somewhere between there. And like this is just the methodology. So this is just an example. So I was just like, this is a concept example. So
Okay.
you can see like somewhere between the higher SSPs is what we would take as the worst case scenario.
Okay. But you will take the worst case scenario. I mean, it doesn't matter what the
Yeah,
policies say at that point, or like the future policies and pipeline and stuff.
I think so. That's something which I was also thinking about. Like, why would someone take a like not the worst case scenario, like maybe a current case scenario, for example. But I guess you have to give leadership like both case scenarios in general. Like this is the worst case, and then they would also ask like what is the best case. Like you would want to show them both because everyone is aiming towards a clean energy economy. So
Yeah.
you would want to show like both examples, I guess.
Yeah. Because the investment that will go into something like a worst case scenario will obviously be more like if you
Yes.
want to solve or apply the solutions for the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
So I was just thinking, how would urban planners sort of approach um, this methodology even? Um, like, should they take the middle thing, like so
So
that
that's a
there's because everything's changing, right? There's a lot of gears that are turning. So there's policy, climate policy, and everything that's coming into action. Businesses are becoming more sustainable. There's like
yeah.
more behavioral changes happening, etc. So it we might still go to the worst case scenario. We don't know, but like business, a lot is changing to avoid that business as usual scenario. So I was just thinking which scenario might urban
Be
planners
better, right?
use?
So that's
Yeah.
a great question because we have used this in our project also. So the flood risk example, which I was telling you about, this coastal risk screening tool,
Yeah.
this is a great website to get flood risk for different scenarios. So when we looked at one of our projects in the Middle East, we saw that if we continue taking the best case scenario, that's when the flood risk is actually like even that's when the flood risk is a lot. Like it basically covers an entire city, for example. And then
Yeah.
when we look at the worst case scenario, it almost covers multiple cities, which is kind of irrational when you think about it, because then you can't really take that as an example and then show it. Oh, I think Naveen is
Naveen's
also
comments.
nice. Um, so yeah, so you can't really. Naveen is also here, right? Maybe let's just
Yes.
say hi to Naveen. Hi, Naveen.
Hi, Naveen. Oh,
You're
you're
on
on
mute, I
mute.
think.
Oh, I'm just driving, so I'm just going to listen to you guys.
Oh,
That's
no
fine.
worries. Okay.
Thank you so much for joining, Naveen.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I just finished my Toastmaster session, so
Oh,
Uh,
awesome.
tell us about it
yeah.
You
later.
finished your Toastmasters what?
Session.
Uh, Session,
Session.
Toastmaster
Uh,
session, yeah.
submission. I was like, okay.
No.
Submissions also.
You guys
Hard.
continue. Yeah,
Take it. Yeah.
Cool, cool. We'll continue and you can listen in the background. But
sure.
yeah, Kruti
Yeah.
was basically asking us a question. How do urban planners account for climate change and climate risks when it comes to looking at the best case scenario or the worst case scenario? So I was just telling her that an example of that was used in one of our projects, like the coastal risk screening tool is a is a website that shows you what's the worst case scenario or the best case scenario for flood risk. And when we were looking at the best case scenario, it was still covering a majority portion of, let's say, a city near the coast in the Middle East. That's where our project was. But when we looked at the worst case scenario, it was literally covering an entire region. And that was very irrational because when we showed it to our clients, they were like, oh, this is never going to happen. Like what you have shown as the worst case, what you've shown as the best case scenario is also quite exaggerated. So we don't trust this website or we don't trust this data. That's what they say. But in reality, you never know. Like if that's the worst case
Yeah.
scenario, in 100 years, the entire region is going to be underground, underwater. It's very difficult to convince them, which is why I feel like as city planners, you need to start looking at least the best case scenario and then start designing cities for them, start alerting professionals about it, like start alerting real estate professionals about it that, hey, look at this region and look at this from 100-year perspective, because that affects land value also. So for example,
Yeah.
currently in Mumbai, in let's say Navi Mumbai where I live, when I looked at Navi Mumbai on this website, it was like literally covered. Like my building was covered in that entire red zone. And I was like, wow, if the developers knew about that, they would never invest in that area, right? Because it's like
Yeah.
it's so scary to even think about it. But I don't think
This
so they
is
trust this.
2100 or like
So it
2100,
depends. So it depends. Like
2050,
the best, oh yeah, 2100, 2100. But
2100.
it depends which scenario we're looking at. So both best case and worst case have projections to 2100. But best case would be that we are looking at transitioning into a good energy-based economy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the coastal risk screening tool also follows that SSP format, or
Yes.
does
At
it?
least that's what they claim, and they have been research. So this website was developed by a university also. So I think they have partnerships with different universities, and they have taken the data from SSPs. So yeah,
Awesome. Okay.
but yeah. But again, like this data is publicly available. So even if they did not make this data, we can also make it with the help of GIS or something and
Hmm.
project it. So it's like, yeah, it's there.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy that people don't think that it is possible for actually submersion to happen in 75 years.
Yeah.
Like a lot can change in 75 years. Come
I
on.
think they do believe that that can happen, but they also have this notion that, oh, we'll be able to reverse climate change or we'll be able to reverse the implications if the whole economy, like things are getting invented every hour. So it's like they think that
Yeah.
something or the other will be invented. So yeah.
Yeah.
So let's let's bet on that then.
But at least what I understood from the study was that, like, if you see in the next few slides, that climate risk only intensifies. So, like for example, in Mumbai's case, you can see that it is intensifying in the areas which were already intense, and it's not rocket science, like we all know, but
Yeah.
it at least shows us like what's the stretch of intensification, like how much
Mhm.
will it go away, like how much what happens.
Yeah. I think
Right.
when you see a particular property that you care about in the red zone, then it's like
And that's
something.
already happening in the US actually. So in the US, like there's a website called apartments.com where I used to look for rented apartments. So if you go there and check, each apartment lists a climate risk also below it. And that was actually added later as they partnered with this website called First Street, Risk Factor in First Street. So
Awesome.
that's yeah. So like each property shows you a specific kind of heat risk or flood risk or cyclone risk or something like that already. And I'm like, it's only time they should start doing something like that everywhere in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, especially in India, I think we don't have a lot of data, right? For a lot
Yeah.
of things.
Yeah, I mean, climate risk data is available,
Yeah.
but
Because
Oh, okay.
globally, satellite
climate
data or something.
yeah, climate risk data, Naveen, is available for the entire globe. The only thing is
Mm-hmm.
people don't know how to integrate that in planning and they don't trust it. That's the sad.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I
Uh,
was
huh.
going through something in the last like few days, like about all the high-rise apartments that are coming in some parts of Hyderabad, and I was reading an article somebody shared on their Insta story that by this time the groundwater could deplete completely. So I was
Yeah.
thinking like how maybe planners and all these people ignored because our real estate is completely economy driven and developers driven.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about that incident when you explained about the climate risk.
No, but that's the thing. Like economically, also, like climate risk is financial risk. In if you look
Okay.
at this example, for example,
Mm.
like
Mm-hmm.
people don't realize the damage that their properties can have if they don't account for climate risks,
Yes.
and that's why like I feel it is very important for real estate developers in Mumbai specifically, or in any other part of the world which is like very dense. I think to
Mm-hmm.
realize that climate risk needs to be taken seriously,
Yes.
and it's just a slap on their face, right? Sometimes like they don't want to trust it. Okay,
Yeah.
how do we not build in this area? So
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
yeah,
I also had I was sort of I wrote an article, um like did brief research on the coastal road thing,
right.
and how
Yeah.
many mangroves they're, um would you say, rehabilitating or whatever. They're destroying, but they're saying they'll rehabilitate it.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering if this methodology also takes into account the infrastructure projects that are already in the pipeline, because that's also another layer that comes
Yeah.
in, because trees and everything will be cut,
But
uh,
yeah, it
could be
does
cut.
take into that. Like if you see the input layers, you can see that tree cover is actually one of the major layers in this
Yeah.
methodology. And then you also see build density. So the moment you add build
So,
density, that's
so
where the
how does the tree, because this, I thought this was like a static layer. Is it a dynamic layer? Like you can actually change things around in this layer?
it that is currently it's static. Currently, it's like the tree cover is basically based on the Google Earth view
Hmm.
or whatever. Like it's extracted from Google Earth. So it is static. But yeah,
Hmm.
like I think if Google Earth updates it, or we can also go and update the tree cover based on local projects that we know. But yeah, I would love for it to be
But
dynamic.
like,
Mm.
because I mean, the current scenario will show mangroves there. Um,
Depending
and
upon Google Earth, yeah. If Google Earth
yeah,
does show
depends on Google
mangroves,
Earth, but
yeah,
like, we already know that it's going to be cut. We already know that, there's this coastal road coming in.
yeah.
Um,
Oh, so
so
you're saying like future project. Okay, got it, got it. So yeah, so I guess that is something which is where we have to edit the layers. So for example, how we are editing the climate risk layers. For
mm,
example, the heat exposure, we are projecting it. Flood risk, we are projecting it. That is in that sense, like if we know what projects are going to come and how it's going to impact the tree cover, we'll have to
mm,
go and physically edit the layer. It's a raster layer, so we'll have to work on that. We'll have to edit the
okay.
density. We'll have to change the land use. Like if we know that the land use is changing, based on that, the composite risk map will also change. And that is
How
how the
does the
scenario.
land use affect? Can you talk a little bit about how all these things? I mean, flood risk and heat risk are pretty straightforward, I guess. How
Yeah.
does the land use affect
I think land use
risk?
is mainly Yeah, so I think land use is mainly for understanding where residential properties are or commercial properties are. So we understand that okay,
Oh,
this flood risk is affecting a major chunk of residential areas, or this heat
mm,
risk is affecting a major chunk of, like when you get out of your house to go to your office, like you're going to be
yeah,
walking through a heated pathway, and that's going to kill a few people if over the years if you're not taken care
yeah,
of that.
heat stroke and stuff.
So exactly. So I think land use becomes a crucial part of understanding the demography and the type of use of that land. You know,
Mm,
so it's all sort of interrelated. That's why the weighting becomes important because like to assign a weight to this layer, like that number, for example, like why is that more important than let's say heat risk? It's very important to understand context. Like for
mm,
example, in Mumbai, a flood risk would be more important than heat risk, for example, or something like that.
yeah.
So this is where AI helps us a lot because I think what GPT models would do is like they would research, they would do like analysis, and then they would help us understand what weight should we give to each of these layers. And and then create a composite map.
Yeah. Also, like socio-economic background would be a really huge
A
thing
good
because
layer.
if,
Yeah.
sorry?
A good layer to add also. Yeah.
Yeah. Because if there is residential properties in a particular place and it's under risk, but they have so many other properties everywhere or something, like they're very rich, very wealthy, and like that's a wealthy area or something, then
Yeah.
it's just like it's
Doesn't
fine.
matter.
Doesn't
Yeah.
matter
I
much.
mean, yeah, it definitely matters
Obviously, yeah,
for
developers
obvious
and stuff.
reasons. Yeah, but you're very right. I think that is one thing which someone had also pointed out, that the layers that were missing in this were like a socio-economic layer. I think that's a great point, because as you see, like the high risk zones with the high density areas are also the most vulnerable areas. They're also the
Yeah.
most socio-economically weak areas.
Okay, so
So
it
wait, I think
uh
Naveen had a point before you go to your
sorry. Yeah,
point.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry for the interruption, but I agree with that. Like, high dense areas are highly vulnerable. Like, in terms of if you look at the resources that they have.
Yeah, makes
Yeah,
So,
sense.
correct.
yeah. I
And
always
I mean,
imagine whenever an infrastructure project comes, like, okay, everything is okay, they're going to develop that, this, but do they have enough natural resources to satisfy their needs?
Yeah.
And which, like, for, if you take India, because the population and the land we have, I mean, there's sometimes we feel there's not enough resources, especially the drinking water.
Hmm.
but Naveen, I visited Tokyo recently. Like I went to Japan recently, and I discovered that
Mm-hmm.
the density of Tokyo is almost, I mean, slightly less than Mumbai, I guess, but it's almost equal to Mumbai, and
Okay.
it's way more than New York or London, for example. But it's still so efficient. So I think it's not
Mm-hmm.
about resources. Sometimes it's also about how do you plan around places. Like for example,
Yes,
like
I agree.
like in India, we don't give a lot of attention to nature-based solutions. Like Ramada
Yes,
was talking about
yes,
nature-based
yes.
solutions. And I think funding them becomes very like, oh, who's going to maintain this? But when you actually show them this stuff, that oh, if you don't maintain this, it's going to negatively impact you in the future financially. That's when people start caring about it. So I think Tokyo becomes a good example to look at that, I guess, in some sense. And I'm not sure
Yeah,
how they're doing environmentally, but I think they might be doing good. This is my intuition. I don't know
yeah.
how they're.
No, definitely, as you said, I think
Okay.
it's not just about natural resources, but how you're planning around it and nature-based solutions. I think they play a very crucial role, and I feel not enough people sitting in the leadership position, especially in India, are like sensitive enough to nature.
Yeah, yeah. That's.
So
I think. And actually, sorry, Kruti, to cut you again. I knew you had a point, but I'll just
I was
finish this
coughing.
point. Oh, sorry. No, but I'm just saying, like, I think in India, land ownership is also such a crucial thing that Pramada
mm,
had pointed out. Because, like you
yeah.
say, like, for example, we don't know how many entities of people own this land. So
Mm-hmm.
maintaining it or developing that, funding it becomes so difficult. So
Yeah.
I guess central government and state governments can take a stance on that to propose
Mm-hmm.
policies on how to maintain that. And the only way they can also take that seriously is if they realize the importance of climate risk. But yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
I had like a, I mean, I was curious about the solutions that you had shown
yeah,
because you went through it very quickly. So I'm just
yes, yes.
yeah,
You want
can
me to
you?
like go through them? Yeah. So
Yes.
these are like a few solutions that I was researching, but it's like basically what this research would give you is like how do we prioritize areas for climate resilient development. Like we can get high
Mm.
risk zones, so automatically that becomes a solution. Then the other thing was guiding land use planning in high risk zones. Land use planning is also evolving. So how do you plan land use around high risk zones? That could be a policy implementation thing as well. Then
Mhm.
nature based solutions and green infrastructure. I think that is a key component. So like I think there are various nature based solutions for urban developments. Like you have blue green infrastructure. You have uh, uh,
Biospheres.
biospheres is a big one. You have you have growth centric neighborhoods also. So you have growth centric solutions also. So for example, if cities are not growing that much,
Oh,
you don't have to grow them. You can shrink them smartly. So this is a very popular approach in the West. Like
how
and
do you
actually,
shrink them?
you shrink them smartly in the sense that you provide the basic necessary facilities for them, like within the cities. So you provide them with your basic hospitals, schools, infrastructure, all of that. But any
Mm.
kind of major, university, for example, or major college or major hospital that they would want to go, they are supported by close by major metropolises. So that way, they are not. I mean, that is also like very context driven. Like, for example, in the Middle East, we saw that it was very important to not grow everywhere. It was important to grow strategically. So that's why
Yeah.
we shrink the cities because that uses less resources, less climate intensive architecture, and it's better for them. Basically, economically also, they use less resources. That's a good point. Then you plan your infrastructure according to what the city wants. So like not all the cities want good car infrastructure all the time. Like they do want a good public transport infrastructure and everything. And then I think disaster risk becomes very convenient, not convenient, but like very planned and organized. Those were some of the solutions, I guess.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. But I was actually, I had seen this concept uh, that was like put all the cars underground and have all the humans on
On the road.
on the
Yeah.
road. Yeah. So that you can have like trees and like more community spaces, etc. Um,
I think London is
so I
doing
was just
that.
wondering, yeah, I was just
London
wondering if
has,
that's a,
if that's a good idea. Again,
I mean, if that's a workable plan, like
I mean,
how it would affect um lifestyle and if it's practical because
hmm,
like trees on top is always
not the best.
um yeah, I mean, I can't wrap my mind
No,
around it
that's
is workable, I feel, but like I
it's
don't
very
know.
context dependent. So I know that in a lot of parts of the world, that's not the best case scenario, but in very dense cities, that's already being applied. So, for example, if you look at London, that's a great example because London is very different from New York or any other major metropolis. Uh, while New York has 10% open space, London has 60% open space. So New York is literally called the concrete jungle, while London has so many parks which are so diversely distributed. And the way it
Yeah,
is doing it is because you have something called as a
transport
super.
and flow.
Yeah, you have TFL, of course, but like you have underground basement superstructures. So London is building like 5 floor basements underground, and it's really prioritizing like on top trees and like just
What is the
reducing of
use
heat.
case for these 5 floor basements?
I'll have to research on that, but I'm not too sure about it. I think it's not just parking. I think it's more to do than parking, other than parking also, but I'll have to research on that a little bit. I'd
Yeah,
seen an article about it, so I thought it's interesting. But that's an
yeah,
interesting question also. Like, does that make sense from an ecological perspective? I would
yeah.
say maybe not, but I guess from a city point of view, like it's creating less heat and everything. So maybe, yeah, I don't know.
I mean, if there's a way to sort of direct all the um you know, if you're building underground, then you have to have like channels, and there's green on top. Then there has to be channels to direct all the
True.
soaked water, and like if they have that
True.
infrastructure properly planned and stuff, then possible.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. I'll have to go in like 5 minutes, I think. Someone
Yeah,
had come. But
no worries. We can end it
yeah,
here.
you
This
end it
was
here.
really good.
Yeah, if you have any other
This
questions,
was
I don't mind
amazing.
asking. Oh, thank you
Thanks,
so
Dhruv.
much.
Yeah,
um,
I was in just between, but I was listening to some of the solutions. It's
yeah,
interesting.
no problem.
Yeah, thank you so
Naveen, do
much.
you have anything? Do you have any questions for Dhruv or ideas that you want to explore for next time and stuff?
Yeah, for next
Yeah,
time.
sure. I'll let you know. Like in terms of, I was thinking about some things that Hyderabad was doing in terms of it is developing the Musi River, and all their solutions felt very foreign. Like that could do something very natural, like what Pramada is doing. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
they have some open forums, but I mean there were a lot of architects also on that boards, but I'm very confused like how much of it is like politically driven
mm,
and
Correct.
like and it's also like there's a lot of corruption, right? When it comes to public projects, the solution don't reach the doorsteps.
Yeah, we
yeah,
can definitely
So
discuss this. I think it's a good idea. If you want to post about it
yeah,
on the group, I think Pramada would be able to join and pitch in also. That'll be nice.
sure.
And I think this call is also recorded thanks to Kruti, so we can post a link to that also if people want to check
yes.
it out.
We
Yeah.
don't need to edit it. I think
No,
this
I
was
think
really
it's
good. Yeah.
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 I
I feel
am
it's like
also working
upload
on
ready also.
maybe, yeah.
What
I have
what
been
was
working
that?
on
I was just saying maybe
like
we can upload it also on YouTube or
yeah,
something. But I was like, it's okay, let it
Okay.
be.
Yeah.
there's this layer of editing which everyone is like तू कर something.
Yeah.
Actually we do मैं करती हूँ and we never do it.
Yeah.
That's why we
uh,
don't call it a podcast now, we call it a community.
yeah,
It's
like
like,
online community. Let's be
yeah.
less ambitious. Um, but I am working on B Corp certification for my firm, so I can talk about that
Yes, that'll be
What
and
amazing.
how
certification?
B Corps has changed and everything. I'm
Yeah,
studying about that right now. So that'll be
that
nice.
would be super cool. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys, for
Cool.
joining.
Thank you
Thanks,
so
Yeah.
much for
Naveen.
joining. Bye bye.
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 Bye.